Well, I think at the time it just meant kids. I mean, you were like, well, let's see, what are we going to do tonight? Let's go over to Peony Park. And
It was a good experience when you went there. It was just nice, pleasant place.
So,
And
had the end, but it started as a job, but it became a way of life.
Question. It's part of me. It's part of my life. Part of my family's life.
for a lot of people, it was the heart of the city. I mean,
Because you get there and your whole world evolved around the people at Peony Park. And other than my mom and dad, the people at Peony Park influenced me more than anyone else.
And there were so many people that enjoyed it and came back year after year.
So I have all these really wonderful images in my mind I wish I could share, but it was really always a good time. Never had a bad time at Peony Park.
Ask today's generation about Peony Park, and they're likely to say, "You mean the Hy-Vee?" But to the generations that came before, Peony Park was a place where many memories were made and friendships were built. Some even called it home.
Peony Park started in 1919 as a gas station, and it was out on the Lincoln Highway. It was out west of Omaha. It was out in the country. It was across the street from Carl Rosenfeld's Peony Gardens.
Joe Malik Sr. and his two brothers, Godfrey and Jerry, purchased the spot because of its location. As it became a regular stop along the highway, the family decided to expand.
He was an avid grower. He loved flowers, and Peony in the earlier years, that was a big part of the park, that he wanted to keep it clean and lots of flowers.
He wanted to be a florist at one time.
Luckily for Omaha, Joe Malik Sr. decided it should expand into an amusement park.
Eventually the ballroom, the restaurant, the pool, all continued to grow up to about 1959, where the putt-putt course was put in, around the world putt-putt. Little Chef was put in about that time in the late 50s. It's a little restaurant in the middle of the park.
Carl Jennings wasn't around then, but he did get his information from a reliable source, Joe Malik Sr. himself.
I was pretty young when I started working there and had worked with him. And he was an older gentleman then, but I found it very easy to talk to. We'd talk a lot about the old days, the old business, the old history of Omaha, that type of thing. A very, very likable personality.
Well, we call him Grandpa Malik. He was really Mr. Malik. He really did make the park, and I loved the park in its younger years. And then he had two sons, Chuck and Joe.
Joe Malik Jr. Was the number 2 son of Joe Malik Sr. His first son was Chuck Malik, a World War II veteran. And Chuck had a lot to do with developing the park as we remember it today.
The Malik family ran the park from its beginning until its end. Joe Malik Jr. and his brother Chuck were largely responsible for the development of the park into what most people remember. However, the ballroom was built during Joe Malik Sr.'s time. It became very well known throughout the Midwest, often drawing some of the best bands in the country.
The ballroom circuit was really big, especially in the Midwest. You know, all the cities and all the little towns had this ballroom network, and all the big bands would travel all around. They go Chicago, Kansas City, Minneapolis, and Omaha. And ultimately, these big bands would end up at Peony Park because they had such a nice stage and such a big dance floor and stuff.
There was always something going on in the ballroom. It was either dinners or shows. There was cocktail parties, wedding receptions. There was just everything you can imagine in the ballroom. There was even a car show in there at one time.
It was sort of the creme de la creme, you know, of the engagements that you could get. Again, there was no venue such as the Waiting Room or Slowdown. So when there was an opportunity to play a place like Peony Park or the Royal Grove, we always jumped at the opportunity. I mean, it was like you knew you were going to have a good time. It was going to be a good gig. It was really spacious, and thousands of people could fit in there. And you were never want for a table. You get in there, and no matter where you look, you could find somewhere to sit. But huge dance floor.
But the ballroom was a grand ballroom. Was lots of wood. It was built in the days before they had sound systems as we know today. Sure, they had some speakers and stuff up on stage, but the sound was built for the building to carry. So the orchestras on the stage could carry their whole beat all the way to the back of the ballroom.
The Peony Park Ballroom was the best place in the world to have a show like the Press Club show. You could feed 1,500, 2,000 people a hot steak. They would cook them on grills in the back. They'd keep them in warming ovens. 1,500 to 2,000 people, a warm steak. You did it in a cabaret atmosphere with the show on stage. It never got better than that.
It was the place to go with Lawrence Welk played there. A lot of the big bands that traveled around was there.
High Heel and the Sneakers. We played years ago with Charlie Burton and the Cutouts. We played with the Chevrons, I do believe. Briefly, they were a big 60s band.
Geez, Eddie Haddad, Beach Boys, Rick Nelson, 311. I mean, you can just pick your time. Louis Armstrong, was well known there.
And later, the Beach Boys played there, which my sister and I were very happy to do that. They had an outside dance in the Grove, and we got to go backstage and meet them and talk to them, which was kind of fun.
The Bangles and the Pixies and the Replacements.
Bobby V, I remember the night Bobby V played there, and I remember when he played his hit song, Red Rubber Ball.
Back when I was in high school, probably my junior year of high school, there was a band called Buckinghams from Chicago, and they were kind of at the top of the charts at that point in time, and KOIL Radio brought them in. You're a 15-year-old kid and you can't believe you're seeing these national acts 10 feet away from you.
The Malik family seen to it that a lot of the bands had business, they would work, and they would work at making entertainment venues, and they'd work at keeping the bands busy, keeping them together, keeping them organized. And that's much to be said about that, and that's why a lot of the bands over the many, many decades remember Peony Park. And a lot of that carried all the way into the 50s and 60s and even the 70s when the rock bands started. Peony Park always helped out the bands or encouraged them to continue entertainment business.
Bill Eustace used to be in one such band.
It was called The Firm because it was all lawyers, and some of us were still in law school. Depending on the time of the year, you'd play indoors or outdoors, but we always favored the outdoor venue, the Royal Grove, because just the mood that it lent. It was always a starlit night, and the amphitheater, the little grove that they had there, had a blue ceiling with lighting that made it look like you were under the stars while you're playing. They had spotlights, and they had stage lights and floor lights, and it was you felt like you were really doing something kind of cool. It was just fun, and you felt like you were in an era gone by even then. It was something that it resonated with me. It was just like, wow, this must have been what it was like, in these big ballrooms and stuff. And it felt good to be there. It was fun. It was like living in the past for a while.
But Peony's ballroom was there all the way up until the very end. It had been remodeled numerous times, and was a little bit of a menagerie as far as the building out of it, but was still, I don't think there's enough wood in Omaha to build anything like it today.
Peony Park's pool was another major attraction. It was developed from a natural spring-fed lake and held around 5 million gallons of filtered, chlorinated water supplied by artesian wells.
The pool was always in great shape. I mean, they had sand all the way around it.
It looked like a lake. Some people think it was a lake, but it wasn't. The pool started about 1920, and they just kept building onto it. It had diving boards, it had springboards, it had a tower, it had a double platform tower at one time.
Half acre of sandy beach. So I don't know how many cubic feet of volume of water that would be, but it was a half mile around.
tons and tons of water, millions and millions of gallons of water. The filtration system of the pool was good enough for any small town water plant. The beach was where it was at. TV show Seven Swings from ABC, Omaha Channel 7 News was filmed on there. It had really a lot of young people, a lot of teenagers, all the way up till, I'd say, early to mid-20s. Very popular to hang out at Peony Park Pool.
Of course, with such a large pool, Peony had to have some top-notch lifeguards.
The best in the nation.
When you were up on the chair, it was serious business, because Peony Park, the way the pool was set up was difficult to lifeguard.
You couldn't just walk in and be a Peony Park lifeguard. You had to have experience.
Because you had a large area of water and docks that blocked your view, diving boards that blocked your view, so you had to have them the chairs strategically placed, but there were still blind spots.
The lifeguards were able to save many people, but there were a tragic few that lost their lives at the Peony Park Pool.
I know there was one young girl, actually she was a sister of one of my sister's friends. She was a young girl. She had drowned in the pool in 4 feet of water.
Going back to probably the 50s, there was a double drowning in Peony Pool on an afternoon, and a very large crowd at the pool. The father and son had went in the pool. The son was going down. The father was trying to help his son. They both cramped up. Something happened. They both went down. A couple lifeguards went in to get them, pulled them out, and the decision had to be made on the beach, which one gets the oxygen, the child or dad. Well, the child's still alive today, and the father expired on the beach.
Despite such tragedies, Peony continued to thrive and expand. Over the years, the Malicks added rides, which also added to the park's appeal. They started small, but by the end, Peony had many popular rides.
Gosh, I think there was probably 23, 24 rides.
There was a castle, the old lady in the shoe.
The Sky Rail was a steel rail that was in a little car that held up to 4 people, and it just was kind of like a tram ride, and it went all the way around the pool. The Galaxy Coaster is a popular ride at the time. It was high-tech at the time. It had brakes all the way around the ride, so if something went wrong or something broke or whatever, you could stop the ride just about anywhere.
Kind of my favorite is there was a wishing well, and we used to go there a lot and throw our little pennies in there and make wishes.
The Scrambler ride, which was in a corner of the park for many years, had been moved several times in the park, was put into the haunted house ride. The Ferris wheel was always good. It was an older, what they call an Eli wheel. Had a big star, an electric star in the middle that lit up. You could see it for a long ways away. Very popular ride.
But as with many amusement parks, sometimes accidents happened, and unfortunately the pool was not the only part of Peony in which such incidents occurred.
The Skydiver was a very popular ride. Was there for quite a few years. I don't know what year it was, must have been about 88. That car flipped open on a kid's birthday there in the neighborhood and bounced him out, and he died on his birthday.
My husband and I had just gotten married and we were on our honeymoon, and we came back to hear that one of the pins on the door of this ride came out, and there was a young man that had died.
One of the most talked about tragedies of Peony Park involved Ed Zorinsky and the night he performed in the Omaha Press Club show, a fundraising event for journalism scholarships.
So would you welcome him back, please, for an unprecedented and undeserved 4th appearance in the Press Club show, Senator Ed Zorinsky.
There was never a Press Club show that we asked him to do that he wouldn't do for us. He did, I think he was in the show during 4 shows, and he always sang his own numbers. That night, everybody was in a very good mood, and they were all looking forward to hearing the senator sing. He was singing his song, The Great Pretender, pretending to be a Democrat while he was acting like a Republican. That was one of the jokes about Ed Zorinsky. Then Ed walked off stage and collapsed. And when he collapsed, of course, they immediately were searching for doctors in the house. The main audience could not see what had happened, but the people around it and the tables close to the wing of the stage left wing of the press club, it was in the shadows. The police and the officials who were there said, for God's sake, keep the show going, because we can't have people rushing for the crowds. We need to get Ed out of here and into a hospital. So we did. And this was in the middle of the show. Ed's number was in the middle of the show. So all of us in the cast knew that this had happened, and we continued to perform the show because that was what we were needed to do. Ed went to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. And then we went back to the show and did it the second night, Saturday night, because C.C. Zorinsky had insisted we do the show. She said, Ed would want you to do the show. You will do the show. And so we did.
Another scar on Peony's past is one many American institutions live with. Segregation was practiced by many businesses back in the day, and not just in the South. In 1963, despite Nebraska laws prohibiting businesses from discriminating, some Omaha businesses continued to do so. Unfortunately, Peony Park was one such business. While Peony did allow blacks in the park area and the ballroom, they were not allowed to swim in the pool.
We went out there probably on a Sunday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, one of the two, either Sunday or Saturday, to go swimming with the expectation that we would be denied entrance. So when I was going to go inside, we were rejected out there. Well, some of the kids I'd gone to school with saw this, and they came over to the fence, wanted to know what's going on, what happened, what's going on there. And so I shared with them that these people will not let us in because of the race. I'm different, I guess. And I remember that there was some disgruntlement by some of the people I'd gone to school with. I wasn't aware that I was involved in anything associated with making history, and no one else was either. But we were rejected and turned away, and we left. Well, it seemed like that within a matter of days, I was called again, and told that management of the facility had reconsidered their position. We were told to come in, enjoy ourselves and what have you, and we did, and there was no incident whatsoever in the pool or in the water or any comments or any type of aggressive or derogatory statement made or about us or them. And everybody was just having a good time, and that was that.
Some folks remember the incident a bit differently.
So Herb and some friends went out and went in and got in the swimming pool, and it was a big deal. Kids left, parents took their children out of the water, wouldn't allow them to be there while the African-American children were in the water.
You know, I don't want the history of Peony Park, even though, yes, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad things to remember about Peony Park, whether it be, you know, deaths in the pool, deaths in the ride area, deaths in the ballroom, race relations at the front gate, that type of thing. But there are more good things to remember about Peony Park, more fun things, more things that are the happier times of Peony Park to remember than the bad things.
A lot of the more recent happier times would probably have to involve Sprite Night. Sprite Nights were held on Thursday nights during the summer.
They were looking for something to get kids in the park, try to get things stirred up during the middle of the week. I believe the radio station was Sweet 98, had a disc jockey that was, I think they called him Hot Scott. I can't remember his last name, but young guy, popular fella, did live remotes from the Royal Grove, the outdoor dance area in Peony, on stage on Thursday nights, I believe it was. And there was probably, no exaggeration, 5,000 kids from everywhere.
It got a little out of control and spilled over into the neighborhoods to the west and got loud, and sometimes, frequently, unfortunately, police were called in.
Youth being youth, full of energy and no place to spend it all. Eventually there was a little bit of a bad element that introduced itself into this event.
Got to be an event that just could not be straightened out. Peony Park people couldn't seem to get it under control.
They had their high moments, you know, and their wild moments, but good crowds, well-behaved youth, where Sprite night just got to be to the other end of the pendulum. It was bad PR for Peony.
Eventually, complaints from the neighborhood and the cost of maintaining the park were just too much. Despite a loan from the city in the mid-'80s, trying to keep Peony Park relevant was a daunting task.
Well, frankly, from the middle '80s, they started to struggle. Struggling that the rides weren't bringing in the money that they used to, and frankly, if it wasn't for the ballroom and their outdoor entertainment venue, the Royal Grove, they would have gone broke before the '90s.
They couldn't compete with a lot of the like the Funplex and stuff like that, and it just was going to be too expensive to update and renovate things.
You know, when you had the Galaxy roller coaster, it was really cool in 1975 or whenever it was when they put it in, but it was really old and boring by 1985. I was on the city council when there was applications to rezone that for different purposes. And I was only 2 or 3 years removed from Peony Park then, and still 100% of my friends were all Peony Parkers.
So as far as doing anything to keep it, I just don't know. I think times change, although I don't know if, I don't know what the snag was, what finally happened that they said we have to close it.
If the public and these well-known business leaders wanted Peony saved, it could have been done. You could argue saying, you know, the hell with the place, you know, it needed a lot of work. But you don't tell the public that, you know, it's Peony Park, for God's sakes, you know, it's like Mecca, it's the place of entertainment, it's the center of the universe of fun for thousands and thousands of baby boomers.
Rallies were held and offers were made, but in the end, the effort just wasn't enough.
Well, yeah, that's one where the brain had to take over the heart, and I knew it. You just knew the facts. That there was no way that they could survive, and why force them? The emotional part was that some good friends became enemies because they didn't like that I supported the change. In fact, there's 1 or 2 that still haven't talked to me since then.
The decision was made to liquidate the park and have an auction. And the land was valuable for development. The auction was quite large, brought in people from all over the world. They sold just about everything, right down to the light bulbs and all the rides and everything. That was it. I mean, it was the end of an era. It was when the last hammer went down in the auction. It was lights out at Peony Park.
For some people, it was their family vacation. And I was lucky enough to live that my whole life. And it was a fun time. And I truly miss it. And I really never thought it would be gone. In my whole life, I never dreamt that it would ever be gone.
For most people, the memories are all they have left of Peony Park.
Practically every birthday party, for all my friends, we'd end up at Peony Park. I mean, it was just that simple.
What better place to play hide and seek is in a ballroom with 100 or 200 tables in it, and you could really find some good spots.
And I saw a girl in a red bikini, so I paged her to head lifeguard chair and asked her if she wanted to go to our little lifeguard party that night, and the rest is history. 7 years after that, we were married, and we've been married for 21 years now.
My folks would take my sister and I to listen to the symphony play outdoors in the Royal Grove. And that was probably the best part of Peony Park for me back then, because it's what I remember.
There's just too much good things came out of Peony Park. There's just too many decades of fun. It'll always be remembered as the fun place, the fun times.